Hello, HERstorians. I'm your host, Heather Ashley, and welcome to another episode of Women of HERstory, a podcast dedicated to celebrating women who have made or are making their mark on our society. Behind door number 2 today is a year's worth of rice-a-roni and your co-host, Pinochle Wallace.
Whoop! Surprise! But you didn't think you'd see me behind door number 2.
Yeah, no, I didn't. There you are.
Haha!
Along with the rice-a-roni.
Excellent. Surprises. 2021.
We want to give a quick shout out to the newest addition to the HERstory team, Lauren. She has joined the team as a social media manager, and she's already hit the ground running by creating a Women of HERstory Facebook page. So, everyone go give that a like and a follow to get extra updates along with our other social medias, Instagram at Women of HERstory Podcast and Twitter at the HERstory Pod.
Yeah, absolutely. Stay updated with the latest and what we have going on and, what information we're posting. And then, of course, keep up with us as we expand our team.
But yes, keep up with the team, keep up with what we're up to on that Facebook and all that good stuff. Before we get into today's episode, it is February, as you of course know, and I want to give you guys a little bit of extra information about Black History Month's origins. The origins are surrounded in ensuring that the contributions of Black Americans in our nation do not get swept under the rug and forgotten. In 1915, 50 years after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery, historian Carter G. Woodson and minister Jesse E. Moreland founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History. They were dedicated to researching and promoting achievements by Black Americans and other people of African descent. In 1926, they sponsored the National Negro History Week, choosing this week to coincide with the birthdays of Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass. This event inspired communities and schools nationwide to organize local celebrations, history clubs, performances, and lectures. Over the next decade, cities were officially recognizing the week. In the late 1960s, quote, Negro History Week evolved into Black History Month on numerous college campuses. President Gerald Ford officially recognized Black History Month in 1976 and issued a public statement to, quote, seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. Since then, every president has designated February as Black History Month and endorsed a specific theme. This year, it is Black Family, Representation, Identity, and Diversity. I hope this information will inspire you to dig a little deeper this month, dig into some parts of American history that are absolutely whitewashed, which is most of our history, and I promise you will find something way, way more. So I just kind of wanted to open up this episode with that information as we, get into the second week of February and our second episode of the month.
Great way to start it off, or, way to start the episode off, absolutely, keeping everyone informed, or, letting everyone know that they should be informed every day, but it's in particular.
Yeah, and it's more than just, clicking retweet or sharing that extra post, to kind of explore and find some information you didn't know.
Learn something new every day.
Yeah, and that's why you're here, right? So, let's talk Union spy rings and Mary Elizabeth Bowser, a freed slave who infiltrated the Confederate White House and provided the Union with crucial information throughout the Civil War.
Ooh, I like me a little espionage.
Mm-hmm.
Like me a little spy
little spy
games.
action.
Yeah.
During the height of the Civil War, Confederate President Jefferson Davis was becoming increasingly paranoid that there was a mole deep in his government. The Confederate Army was struggling against the Union, who seemed to be getting better and better at predicting his moves. Sometimes you're right to be paranoid, because there was definitely a mole, but it wasn't quite a member of his government. The mole was a freed slave with a photographic memory who cared for the First Lady's dresses and slipped secrets to the North from Davis's desk. How did an educated freed slave end up in the Confederate White House? To answer this question, we have to talk about a Union sympathizer entrenched in Southern society. Elizabeth Van Lew was born in 1818 to a prominent slave owner in Richmond, Virginia. Upon her father's death in 1843, she and her mother used the money they received from his death, which was $10,000, about $300,000 today, to buy and free his slaves and a number of their family members.
Whoa.
Elizabeth abhorred slavery, saying, "No pen, no book, no time can do justice to slavery's wrongs, its horrors." She was a prominent society figure and was shunned well before the war even began for her anti-slavery sentiments. Once the Civil War began, she was even further cast away and disliked. Van Lew did not care one single bit about what a bunch of racist society losers had to say. In fact, she played it up. She adopted a distracted, muttering persona as a cover for what was really going on in her mansion. She was even dubbed Crazy Bet. Like, that's how much she sold it.
That's
she
so
was like,
good.
okay, I'm
That's
going to make
great.
them think I've completely lost my mind so that they just ignore all rumors. They ignore all of
Man,
everything.
she went all method. She was like, I'm gonna milk this. That's great.
She would regularly visit Libby Prison, a Confederate prison in Richmond, infamous for overcrowding and harsh conditions. She would bring food and medicine, even helping escapees, sometimes hiding them in a secret room in her mansion. She and her mother lived there during the war and ran a spy ring known as the Richmond Underground. They didn't use particularly sophisticated spying techniques, but they were one of the most, if not the most, successful spy rings during the Civil War. Information her agents provided Union General Ulysses S. Grant made the siege of Richmond possible.
Man,
I know.
I love that they're basically their own downfall. They're just like not
idiots.
even aware. And also, I think it's really cool. Like, I wonder what set precedent for, like, they didn't have, I don't think they had the term spy, but, like, I wonder what...
They did have spy.
So then I guess that makes sense. So then I wonder or maybe how they might have been inspired to, like, pull off a couple things, because it just seems like in that sort of time, like, you almost have to lend yourself to creativity in order to, like, think like that.
Especially
and
with,
like, during this time period, that's not really, like,
there's no technology.
There's so much going on. It's like, I couldn't imagine, like, thinking on that sort of wavelength where it's like, well, maybe we could do something like this to do this.
Oh yeah, I think it just stemmed from a desire to do whatever they could in their power and their position, and it's one of those things where these women, Elizabeth and her mother, knew that they needed to use their position as very wealthy white women in society to do what they could to help all of help Black America and help be like, what can we do to facilitate what we know they knew that the people that were part of their father's, her father's slaves, that they were very intelligent, capable people. And I think they wanted to be like, what do you need from us to make sure that you guys are able to be, part of the world in a actual human way, I feel like that kind of is probably where that type of creativity stems from, is being this just like desire to do whatever you can, be like, well, we could try this.
Yeah.
The Confederate didn't suspect her until the end of the war in 1864, when the war for Virginia and the South was already essentially lost. When Grant's army came rolling into Richmond in 1865, she wrote in her journal, "Oh, army of my country, how glorious was your welcome." I just love that. Even though she was in the South, she was like, no, this is not my country. The Union, these are the people who I stand with, and this is the army of my country. Oh,
Yeah.
just so powerful.
Yeah.
One of the slaves that Elizabeth freed and brought into the Richmond Underground was our subject for today. Born Mary Jane Richards around 1840 to parents enslaved by Van Loo's family, Mary had a different childhood than most children who were born into slavery. She was 3 years old when Elizabeth freed her family, and they most of them stayed and worked for the Van Loos. Elizabeth took a great interest in Mary, seeing how intelligent she was from the very start. Elizabeth sent her up north to be educated during her teenage years at the Quaker School for Negroes in Philadelphia. Now, this next bit I'm going to share, I could only find in one source. I considered leaving it out, but the source was the History Channel, and I also felt like even if this is something that didn't happen
Directly.
with these two people, it is something that would have happened and did happen in general.
Yeah, I feel like they wouldn't make, like, if maybe it's not so much made up, it might just be like different names or like glorified,
so
embellished a little bit. But I definitely think there's
I wanted to add this part.
Truth to some stuff.
I just kind of wanted to share this little part. Upon returning from school, Mary was arrested. It was prohibited for Black Virginians who lived in a freed state to return. So she spent 10 days in jail.
Wow.
Until Van Loo was able to pay her bail. And just like Van Loo, Mary was an excellent actress. She was able to take on any role or title that best benefited the scenario in front of her. Upon her arrest, she gave the name Mary Jane Henley, and on her release, she used the name Mary Jones. She was like, y'all don't get to know who I am.
They're so dumb.
Like,
yeah.
You don't get to know,
That's
and
great.
you can just go away.
Yeah.
On April 16th, 1861, she married Wilson Bowser, a freed Black man. The ceremony was unusual, as the parishioners of the church were primarily white, and the Civil War had officially began 4 days earlier. At 4:30 a.m. on April 12, 1861, Confederate troops fired on Fort Sumter in South Carolina's Charleston Harbor. Unfortunately, less than 2 days later, the Union were forced to surrender this battle. Elizabeth Van Loo approached the newlywed Mary Bowser about joining the Richmond Underground in an incredibly risky position. See, Van Loo had a friend who worked as a seamstress near the Confederate White House. She convinced her to bring Bowser along to help at functions held by Varina Davis, the wife of Jefferson Davis. Mary soon became a servant at the Confederate White House. She had to prepare herself to become a slave again, but she knew she had to do it. Mary assumed the name Ellen Bond, a slow-thinking but able-bodied servant. Lloyd Levine, a historical novelist, based one of her books on Bowser, and she said, by playing to that stereotype, she becomes an intelligence agent and therefore proves the value of Black intelligence at undermining the institution of slavery itself. Bowser worked as a servant, cleaning, serving meals, and tending to the First Lady's dresses. She was literate, had a photographic memory, and could read the documents she had access to. This meant she would be further able to better interpret conversations she was overhearing.
That's so good. That's so
Oh,
good.
it gets better.
She's like the best plant.
One way she would pass on Confederate secrets directly from their trash president was to take the First Lady's dresses to Van Loo's seamstress friends, not only just for work, but to send messages.
Yeah.
She would sew them into the fabric.
That's so crafty and like creative. Like I can't even fathom the thought process it took where she was like it.
I know.
That's so great.
Oh,
so
my
great.
gosh. Oh, it just gets so much better. Another way she was able to pass along information was through Richmond's formal spy master, Thomas McNiven.
Spy master.
I know, and his name is Thomas McNiven. Like,
Yeah.
That's what a spy name.
Yeah, seriously, it's definitely like a Tom Clancy name. Tom Clancy character name.
He was a baker whose business was located on North 8th Street. It was an unassuming hub for information. Agents could visit the bakery without suspicion. Not only that, but McNiven was regularly out and about for deliveries. When he would come to the Davis household, Mary could greet him and talk briefly. In 1904, just before his death, he shared his wartime activities with his daughter, Jeanette B. McNiven, and her nephew, Robert E. Waite, Jr. And according to McNiven, Bowser sourced most of the crucial information. He said, as she was working right in the Davis home and had a photographic mind, everything she saw on the rebel president's desk, she could repeat word for word.
Wow.
Unlike most colored, she could read and write. She made a point of always coming out to my wagon when I made deliveries at the Davis's home to drop information.
I mean, that's just like, I can't believe, like, under their nose the whole time. She was so good at it, though. She never...
Incredible.
She was able to, like, you know, get this information off in the most...
It's just sly, casual.
Coolest ways.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, James Bond was a spy, but he was never sewing messages into dresses. Like, that takes a level of tenacity that I don't think Mr. Bond had.
Nope.
He usually broke stuff and then explained things later. She was, like, sewing in messages and saving countless lives.
The value of information obtained passively and actively by Black Americans behind Confederate lines was clearly understood by most of the Union generals early on. A stream of articles and stories in the Northern press during the war highlighted the important role of Southern African Americans. General Poopy Pants, Robert E. Lee, the commander of the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia, was also aware. In May of 1863, he said, and I'm quoting him, so, "The chief source of information to the enemy is through our Negroes. Kill yourself, sir." And it makes sense, though.
He was also the person that said, attack, retreat, attack, retreat. What are you doing, Lee?
And it makes sense, though. Traditional... it's been a minute since a Hamilton reference,
he didn't say all that, but he definitely was in that scene, yeah.
But it makes sense. You know, traditional attitudes of the area meant that Black Americans doing what looked like menial activities could move without suspicion. Officials and officers often simply ignored the presence of their personal servants while they were discussing the war, essentially undoing themselves.
Yeah.
They thought so little of these people that they were like, they fear me enough that they won't tell anybody anything that we're saying.
They totally showed their asses.
What idiots.
They totally showed their asses.
They're so stupid.
They're like, these people, they'll never be able to get it. Here's all the plans.
It's so
I don't understand
ridiculous.
that. I don't know. I feel like the bad guys were way dumber before. Like, now they're definitely dumb, but, like, at least they attempt to do a better job of, like, covering up their being dumb. Yeah. Before it was like, hey, I'm dumb, here are my plans. Don't tell anyone. You probably won't. Do, and everyone's, like, writing this down or photogenic memory, bringing it up to the, north and being like, listen, you'll never believe what he said today. You'll never believe it.
Mary went on without suspicion for a very long time. But in the last days of the Confederacy, suspicion began to fall on her. In January of 1865, she fled, but not without one last mission. Her last act as a Union spy was an attempt to burn down the Confederate White House.
Oh, wow.
It was unsuccessful, but she was like, bye.
Yeah, that's a big last mission.
She said,
one more thing.
I'm gonna light your
then
curtains on fire.
Yeah. They gave her, like, a bottle that was, like, filled up with liquor and, like, the...
Molotov cocktail.
Yeah, and the cloth. And they were like, here you go, and then, we'll see you. And when we see you, here's a lighter. Be safe.
After the war ended on May 9th, 1865, the federal government destroyed all evidence of spy activities, wanting to protect the lives of Southern spies, McNiven and Van Loo's activities included. They could have more precisely detailed information about what Bowser had passed on to General Ulysses S. Grant. And sadly, the journal that Bowser had written in was accidentally discarded by her family in 1952.
Dang.
They rarely spoke of her work, though, no doubt because of Richmond's political climate and attitude toward Union supporters and Black people, and also the 50s. Just in general, like, you don't talk about it because that was it. It's just you.
That sucks.
Yeah.
I hope in the Spy Museum in D.C. they have something.
There's no record of her post-war life and no date of her death. And it was also unfortunate because I couldn't even find if she and her husband had any communication with one another during the war. It just is very, that sucks. But it was something where she was like, all right, it's either be married and stay quiet and just kind of live this life, or I'm gonna risk it all and go undercover in the Confederate White House. Like, yeah.
Those
Crazy.
That's tough. I mean, what do you do? Like,
yeah.
Which path do you choose? That's tough.
Yeah, she chose quite a path.
The greater good.
She is among numerous African American women spies who worked with the Union during the Civil War. We will never know how many women engaged in undercover spy operations, as most desired to stay anonymous. Like spies you don't want to be exposed, even after the fact. What if you need to be used again for various things? And it's also just kind of the climate. You're in the South. And it was also, there were people who just passed off information one time and they're like, please don't say my name.
Yeah.
And that's totally valid. It's
like informants, you know what I mean? Like, you could do your job and then, that's it. But you could also make an enemy or two. And then once your job is done,
exactly.
like a family member of the person who you screwed over is like still harboring resentment. And they're just like, hey, and then you're dead.
Harriet Tubman is, of course, the most well-known. Another would be Marie Touvestre. I'm so sorry on that pronunciation. I'm not sure. It looks very French. She was a free Black woman who worked for a Confederate engineer in Norfolk, Virginia. She overheard the discussion of plans for building the CSS Virginia. Being the kind of woman who likes to live dangerously, she obtained a copy of the plans, crossed enemy lines to take the information to the Secretary of the Navy, Gideon Welles. The information she provided made the Union speed up the construction of their very own ironclad warship, the USS Monitor.
That's great. I'm very glad she was essential to that
Incredible.
Process. That's
and the thing is,
very cool.
I mean, the amount of people that contributed, and I think something that is unfortunate is that our history books discount the contributions of enslaved Black Americans and freed Black Americans in the South who were literally essential to the Union's success. Without Mary Bowser, it wouldn't have happened.
Meanwhile, we have songs and stories about Paul Revere, and even that historical context is incorrect.
Yeah.
But we adore this man. The redcoats are coming. The redcoats are coming. It wasn't even him.
Yeah.
It was like he was the other person. It was like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there are always going to be unsung heroes and heroines in history, and I guess that's why we do what we do here, to make sure that those people get their just desserts.
In 1995, the U.S. government honored Mary Elizabeth Bowser for her work in the Civil War. She was inducted into the Military Intelligence Corps Hall of Fame in Fort Huachuca, Arizona.
Cool.
At the ceremony, it was said that Ms. Bowser succeeded in a highly dangerous mission to the great benefit of the Union effort. She was one of the highest placed and most productive espionage agents in the Civil War. Her information greatly enhanced the Union's conduct of the war. Her gravestone reads, Mary Elizabeth Bowser, born 1840, and, quote, she risked her life and liberty so that all could know freedom.
Ooh.
Yeah. Ooh.
She really put everything on the line. I mean, that's not, it's like
she literally she would have been executed on the spot if they caught her.
It's a good thing they were just so dumb and full of themselves to not even think that could happen. I mean, at the same time, it's like I wonder how many stories like espionage and like spy warfare there was that the Confederates were like, maybe like they knew about the mole, but they didn't know how to like look for one.
Well,
and
they thought the mole was in the government. They thought it was They thought there's no way it could be a black person.
So instead of closing ranks, they were just like, meh.
Honestly, like they thought there was no way that it could possibly be a black woman at that.
She's the ultimate hustler of the Civil War. She definitely is one of the
honestly
one of the essential figures. And like I said earlier, the unsung heroines.
I just love that they said the most productive espionage agent of the Civil War.
That would I would, for
incredible.
For
I just wish, I understand why all that information was rid of. I hate to think that there was also maybe a little bit of prejudice involved in that, but at the same time they did get rid of also like Van Loo's information. She heard like journals and everything like that weren't destroyed. So like
no, she definitely.
But yeah,
she played them, and
I love it.
She is definitely awesome. I am interested in another episode where we find out about the least productive spy.
It would probably be coming from the Confederate, and he's just spreading misinformation. So really, he ends up being like benefiting the Union.
I'm very curious to think. Yeah, like so that was like the most successful one, right? And it worked. What did they think was like a good idea? Like, because that was a good idea, but like I wonder what idea they had that they thought was good, and it was like
it just backfired. Yeah.
Imagine it was like they tried doing a Trojan horse situation where like the leg fell off and then like they were exposed, or like something just ridiculous where like
you want history's blunders.
Yes, like America's Funniest Home Videos, kind of like that's why I said I would like another episode where it's like America's silliest home blunders, the Civil War. Check out this person, they had their shoes tied and tripped, and the gig was up. Anyway, she is great. And I am glad that she was on our side.
Yeah. Oh my God. Absolutely. And,
wow.
It was quite a roller coaster researching. I was very disappointed that, like I said, I couldn't find more information. But I'm glad there was the information that I could find. But again, like I said, I understand why those records were destroyed.
Yeah.
The Confederate actually did the same.
Right.
After the fact, but they destroyed a whole bunch of other stuff that would like prevent them from being prosecuted in certain things. Anyway, that's also a different podcast. But
we're just gonna make statues all over the country, and we were like, nope.
Yeah. Well, thank you, HERstorians, for tuning in again. We hope you'll dig a little deeper into our country's history and HERstory, and recognize and celebrate the overlooked contributions of Black Americans. Come back this Friday for an interview with Dr. Mary Roro. In this interview, Dr. Roro shares with us her role in the Music and Medicine Committee of the American Medical Women's Association. She talks about connecting arts and science, how music can heal, and so much more. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and tell your friends. Follow us on the social medias, Twitter at
the HERstory Pod,
Instagram at
Women of HERstory Podcast.
Go like the new Facebook group,
Women of HERstory,
and visit our website at
ofherstory.com.
Until this Friday, be safe, stay healthy, and show the world what you're made of.
Bleep bloop, wear a mask. Bye.